my first question is, can you briefly talk about your research at the University of Canberra?
Yeah.
What exactly your research was at? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So for me, I came across gamification and I was just really curious about how does this thing work to create meaningful change in the workplace. So my dissertation focused on gamification in 3 deliberately diverse workplaces. So a school, a restaurant, and a government department. And I designed and implemented a gamification experience in each of them. And the theory I was basing it on is called Cultural Historical Activity Theory, or CHAT for short, because it's quite a long word. So it was looking at cultural historical activity theory being one that looks at the way that people learn and work together as an ecosystem. So taking this complex systems view of an organization and then applying game mechanics to measure those changes. So that was the focus there. I found really good results, increased engagement, increased communication, better clarity on team goals. And in each of the 3 organizations, we had identified what's called a systemic tension. So something in the system that wasn't working as well as it should, and we applied the gamification to that as well. And you could then visualize the change using this cultural historical activity theory. So that's 100,000 words in a nutshell.
Fantastic. I think that itself was very meaningful. In fact, my second question was actually geared up with the same way, which is as follows. So gamification is largely a theoretical concept when it comes to understanding it in academia, as well as obviously at the PhD level also. But it's equally practical in nature. How simple or complex was it to bridge the gap between the two?
Between practice and academia?
Yeah.
I actually think that was a really big strength of my PhD, as well as the work that I do. So I found that, I could just spend my weekend really immersing myself in the research and the theory and really thinking deeply about what is this thing called gamification, how and why does it work, and really understanding it. And that was really useful to understand, self-determination theory and all these other ones. And then it's like, well, so what? On Monday, I have to make it work for clients in the real world that have all of their constraints. So how does the theory translate? So I really embraced that tension and played with it. And part of my dissertation is a methodology that bridges practice and theory. So using design-based research to really do that. So there are approaches to do that, and I think holding that tension is useful. It's useful because practitioners, go, just tell me how it works and why it works so I can make it happen. And then the academic side going, well, let's just really think about what's happening here and how can we better understand it. So I really.
Fantastic. So how did PentaQuest happen?
So I came across gamification in 2013, and I just started colleagues. And it was more for fun, and there was things that were going on in the office. So very messy creative space. So I just started on time, all these other things as well. I just found it was a really good way to reward some of the other culturally important behaviours, not just sort of measured performance type of indicators. And through that, then I had the colourful leaderboard up, on the wall. And clients would walk past and say, "Oh my goodness, this is amazing! How can I use this?" And so I just found enough demand through, and that was enough demand then to start PentaQuest. And by that time, I'd fallen in love with gamification, and I didn't want to do anything else anyway. So.
Fantastic, great. So understanding behavior is usually critical when it comes to practicing and learning gamification. So how do you rehearse learning and unlearning behavior?
Well, there are several things that happen when we talk about a new habit formation, as I'm sure you know as well. So one of the things that I really like is BJ Fogg's behavioral model. So it looks at having a temporal convergence of motivation, ability, and a trigger. And so when we look at enacting a new behavior, whether it's a learning behavior or a different workplace behavior, we need to understand what's the underlying motivation for people. And that also looks at what is stopping them from doing the behavior as well as what is pulling them towards the new behavior. They need the ability to do that, so they need to have the tools, the access, the time, the mental space, the money sometimes, you need to have all of those things. And then gamification for me gives the ability, it gives additional motivation, but it also gives a trigger, something to prompt that new behavior. And through that, then gamification helps close the intention action gap, because most of the time we want to do something, we know it's good for us to learn, we know it's good for us to go out and run or whatever it might be, but there's something that's stopping us. There's this gap between our attention and our action. And for me, I think gamification is a really good way to bridge that gap, and that's partly why it can result in the behavior.
Absolutely. One of the interesting things which most of the published literature and people who are practicing gamification in real life say, they believe that, and in fact we also see that gamification has resulted in positive behaviors. But has there been experiences in your life, Kerstin, wherein you could have found that gamification has really not worked out for people, companies, organizations? You yourself, you were trying something and say, oh, I thought this will really help me or my organization or my colleagues. It does not help. So any experiences on the negative side of gamification?
Yeah, and there's a couple of different sides, right? So the first question that we always ask is this something that should be gamified, right? So we know that gamification works for so many different things. We know it comes in different shapes and sizes, and you can gamify almost anything, but just because you can doesn't mean you should. So as part of the PentaQuest methodology, the first step is always looking at, is this something that should be gamified or not? And particularly if you're looking at quite a sensitive subject matter, if it's a very serious subject matter or something that needs to be treated with care, sometimes adding gamification is just the thing to really work through it. Like sometimes being deliberately playful for something serious can work really well, but it also could go the opposite way. So you really want to make sure that you're doing that well. One example, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, it's quite a well-known example here in Australia. It's called Dumb Ways to Die. And it's got elements of gamification in it. It was done by Melbourne Metro Trains. And they were looking at how do we communicate safety around trains, like don't step too close, don't jump off into the track. So really serious subject matter, because people can get hurt and people die. But people don't like to hear negative messages because we just kind of filter it out. And so what Metro Trains did is deliberately went very playful. And to anyone listening, I'd recommend you look up Melbourne Trains, the Dumb Ways to Die video. There's a very catchy song that's going to get stuck in your head, but it's a really great example of using very playful mini games, little characters and little songs and things like that to get through a very serious subject matter. So that's an example where they've done that really well. But there's also examples when gamification has been used poorly. There's an example by Disney a few years ago, which I'm sure audiences might be familiar with, that was looking at tracking the workers that were cleaning cleaning the rooms, and they had this electronic scoreboard, but it wasn't very well balanced gamification, and it ended up with mental health and physical health issues in the staff, which is absolutely not within the spirit of gamification, is to add fun. So definitely there's examples when gamification doesn't work, but I think it's more in the execution of it. And the message for gamification practitioners is to be very careful and be very thoughtful about how you apply gamification, making sure, one, that gamification is the right approach to solving that challenge, and two, that if you are going to use gamification, that you've really calibrated it right. So making sure it's sensitive, it's not patronizing, and definitely that it's not nudging negative behaviors or having perverse that have negative outcomes for people, because that's not what gamification is about.
Fantastic. Listen, this is the aspect of gamification which is usually practiced before the implementation phase. A large part of it also lies post implementation. So how do you sustain gamification in companies? I think that's something which we would also like to understand from you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really important question, and it's one that clients ask as well. You know, I think when we speak with clients or potential clients, they can see that gamification will be exciting and enticing, but a common question is, well, will it be a you know, exciting, and then will it lose interest? We've got clients that have been using our gamification platform for 3 years and have signed on for another 3 years, because the way that we've done that gamified experience works for sustained engagement. But again, that's how it's been designed. So for us, when we look at applying gamification to workplaces, we know that it's to address for years, and so we've built in mechanics and different feedback loops and different things to keep users coming back regularly. Having said that, I think it comes back to why the is being used in the first place. Sometimes your goal could be just to raise awareness, and maybe a 1 month long or a 3 month long gamification experience is all it takes to achieve that objective. So when you're looking at the success of gamification over time, it really comes back to what is the purpose of it. You know, are you looking to something rapidly, or is it something that you'll be doing longer term? So it really comes back to that intent, and also how you measure success as well.
Fantastic. I think that was something which is very, very important for all of us. But we have also seen that a lot of times gamification is confused with playing games. People believe that if I play a game, I am being gamified. Have you also faced similar situations when you deal with your clients?
All the time, and it's kind of annoying. I mean, when I first started, you know, speaking about gamification, people would say, "Did you make that word up?" And it's like, no, I didn't make that word up. So this is going back a few years. People hadn't term. Now people have heard of the term, but they're using it incorrectly. So in some ways it's good for us as gamification, like as an industry, it's good. People are hearing about it, people are using it, so that's a good thing. But then they do use it incorrectly, which can be a problem. I mean, it's annoying more than anything. It's not their fault at all. But it can sometimes be an issue when they think that, you know, they want a serious game, or they want a game, or they want gamification, and they're actually different. So part of the way that we combat that is whenever we first speak to clients, and we ask them questions to understand when they say gamification, what do they actually mean, and we show examples, and we also talk about, you know, the different types of game-like experiences. And then through that, we end up, you know, getting on the same page fairly quickly. Yeah. So while I find it a little bit annoying, mostly it's a good thing, because it means people are hearing about this approach. So, but yeah, I think for probably a few years.
Absolutely. So, having said that, do you still believe that gamification will be more categorized as a strategy or as a tool, or both?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Is it more of a strategy or a tool? I don't know. It's easy for clients to think about it as a tool, which in some ways it is, but just like any tool, it's only useful if it helps you achieve your outcome. So yeah, I mean, when we implement gamification in organizations, we tie it to their strategic outcomes. We tie it to the return on investment that they can get. And again, it comes back to the measurement of what's the intent that you're looking to achieve. Yeah, so I don't know. That'll be an interesting one. I'd love to hear your thoughts as well on that one, and have to see what
Definitely. So for us, if you ask us, I mean, we have been experiencing both sides of the story. And when it comes to gamification, largely a lot of companies, wherein I'm also interested, they really believe that game elements or game tools are largely a good way to engage their audience, which is definitely what you also probably believe. But a lot of companies are also now using this as a strategy, wherein they know for a fact that strategies are usually built for a long-term objective, and sustainability is usually a tool which they definitely would take into consideration. So they know for a fact that if I'm investing, and largely, so for example, I come from India. Uh, the companies which are localized here, they also believe that there is a huge investment cost when I switch my platform to a gamified platform. So it's better should give me a long-term result rather than a short-term engagement. And so, for example, for an onboarding process, that could be a good tool. Why? Because the process is much more smaller, much more shorter for that matter. But if I want to look at employee engagement, which will stick with my company for maybe X amount of years, it should better be a strategy rather than just be a tool.
Yes. Okay. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, and I suppose when you know the client I was referring to that signed on for 6 years, that I guess they're using it as a strategy. That's their approach for managing their people is through gamification. So yeah. I think the other thing that we'll see is as gamification is gaining awareness and popularity, that people do realize you can use this as an approach or as a strategy. So I suspect and hope that it will continue to grow in that way.
Absolutely. So the next few questions are slightly on the fun part, and I want to understand your thoughts. So, for example, PhD is generally a dry and a lonely journey. Kerstin, do you really wish to gamify that? If yes, any ideas on that?
Yes, PhDs definitely are a long journey and a hard journey. I mean, I really actually enjoyed my PhD experience because I just love gamification. I'm just so passionate about it. It just allowed me to think deeply and explore and play. So I really enjoyed that. I broke down the parts of my journey, and I really like progress bars and checklists and things like that. So I definitely did that for myself as a way to be like, right here I'm progressing and I can see, lights and green ticks sort of going along. So that's definitely useful. And that was sort of enough for my brain. But if you want to kind of get more creative, I mean, I kind of think of a PhD like climbing a mountain, or like Frodo going into Mount something, so you can get really visual and still have that progress bar and have those milestones, whether it's climbing Mount Everest or something. You're going, right, I'm going to reach my introductory seminar and conference, or like whatever those milestones are. So yeah, absolutely. And for me, that helped understand this big picture of this whole journey. And sometimes, I don't know what your universities are like, but sometimes universities aren't the best at actually mapping out the process, and you have to really find what it is. But yeah, if you can gamify it, yeah, absolutely should. And celebrate along the way, not just at the end, because it's a long journey.
Absolutely. And in fact, when I said long journey, more important is that we stay motivated during those X amount of years, 4 years, 5 years, 3 years. It becomes taxing after a point in time, and you really want to get rid out of it. As if it's like the last 3 months of your notice period, you want to just get rid out of the company. It's the same feeling at times. But yes, that's how it is. Great question. So my next question is, what is your favorite game and why?
A lot faster. I don't think I have one favorite. I'm Dungeons and Dragons. I've been playing that for about 5 years. I just love that as a gameplay. It's creative, it's fun. You're collaboratively creating it together, but it's also just by the roll of the dice. Like, it's just completely really. No wonder it's such a popular game. It's been played for decades. I just think it's really clever and fun. It's multi-people, imagination. Oh my goodness! So yeah, really big fan of that. But I don't have one favorite game. That's too hard a question.
I know. But then who and what inspires you to be in the same profession? Any inspiration? Any one
Yeah,
person? Anyone or a set of people in your life who have really inspired you to be here?
I mean, there's so that in the field. So I was introduced to gamification by Marigo Raftopoulos, who's an Australian gamification designer, also a PhD. So if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have, come across the, or maybe I would have, but if it wasn't for her, I would have been introduced to gamification. So yeah, definitely have a sense of gratitude for her. There's a lot of people I really admire. Ruck is one from Germany, and I had the pleasure of meeting him at Gamification Europe in Berlin in 2019, and that was a bit of a fangirl moment because I really like the way he thinks about gamification. He's got some really nice pithy quotes that really embody gamification. Gabe Zickerman, one of the early ones, Jane McGonigal, they're both less active now, but they're early on quite inspiring. But there's just amazing things happening all over the world with gamification. So yeah, I really love being part of the community and the field. And I think the more we as gamification designers and practitioners and academics can work together, the more we can advance the field of gamification. And at the end of the day, that's why we're all here. So yeah, it's very, very exciting to be part of that.
Great. Absolutely. I also have my set of fan moments, and I'm sure I will also live that very soon.
Great.
But any suggestions? Any suggestions? Any courses? Any learnings which you definitely want people to pursue for someone who wants to get into a similar profession in gamification?
Yeah. I mean, you just start. There's online courses, there's books, there's TED Talks, there's podcasts. Just start consuming the information, and the best thing you can do is actually design a gamified experience yourself. That's how you're really gonna work it. So you can start with yourself, your fitness or some other aspect of your life that you want to do. Start with yourself. It doesn't have to be digital either. Like I worked for the first 2 years of playing with gamification, all in analog, all pen and paper, physical things. And it was still really effective. And we still sometimes do analog gamification for clients. So, don't be discouraged if you don't know how to code or anything or if you don't know how to visual design or whatever. Don't let that stop you. Just get started. Because when you look at the skill sets of a gamification designer or of a team, you've got technical skills, you've got artistic skills, you've got the game mechanics and the behavioral skills, you've got the client facing, how do you actually help people translate what they need for their business into the game mechanic, how do you pull it all together? So there's lots of different skills and areas that a gamification designer needs. So just get started. Reach out to the community. Most of the time they're really friendly and happy to help. So LinkedIn and connect and be part of all of that. But yeah, I highly recommend it. I think as the field keeps growing, I think it's going to be a more and more desired skill as well. There's a couple of online courses. I'm also a big fan of the Sententia.
Yeah, Monica.
Yeah, exactly. So there's some really great courses. So Sententia offers a couple of different levels of gamification design. That's a really good place to start as well. So yeah, definitely check those guys out.
I also like their game garage concept, which they do it every Friday. So Monica does that every Friday. Yes,
Oh, right.
every Friday. Yeah, so this game garage concept, I really like that. I always attend that. It's pretty late for us. In fact, it's 5 a.m. in the morning when that happens. But yeah, I don't miss that. Every Friday I wake up at 5 in the morning to attend that concept. So Monica's doing a great job.
Yeah.
Monica's doing a great job for that matter. So my
Absolutely.
last set of questions, and this is the rapid fire round which we usually do. It's also like a game which we engage. So I'll say one word, and you give me one connecting word to that.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All set. Great. So first word. Word.
Did you say word? PowerPoint.
Okay. Love.
Dogs.
Research.
PhD.
Behavior.
Nudge.
Team.
Love.
Leaderboard.
Fun.
family,
Heart.
music,
Michael Jackson.
habit,
Habit. Goal.
culture,
Important.
autonomy,
Self.
purpose.
Mission.
Fantastic, great,
Whew,
super,
that
wow.
was intense. you can
Great.
like psychoanalyze me now with all of those connections there. Freud would be happy.
Yeah, fantastic. So that's about it. Manish, over to you. I'm done with my set of questions. I'm sure you have some more.
Yeah, I have only one question if you would like to
Okay.
answer. And, I'm asking only from you this question primarily because you are one of the rare ones who have practiced gamification with an academic bent. Okay, so that's why I'm asking this question to you. And the question is, how do you strike a balance between customization of gamification and generalization of gamification?
Interesting. It is a really interesting question. So on one side, I believe that for gamification to be effective, it needs to be customized. And we've seen that if you just throw on points, badges, leaderboards as non-customized, very simple, it's not gonna work. So you have to customize it. We've got a model of 7 motivations that we use. So we understand which of those 7 motivations is prevalent in a particular user group, and then choose the game mechanics based on that. So, for example, when we work with not-for-profits, they're really high on purpose. And so if you throw leaderboards in competition, it doesn't really gel. But if you use mechanics like a collective achievement or stories of impact or these sorts of things, then it does gel a lot better. Having said that, sometimes we work with private organizations and they love competition. They love leaderboards. You're like, great, let's give them some of those competitive mechanics. So on one side, customization is really, really important. On the other side, particularly if it's like from a business perspective, it's a lot, what's the word? Efficient's not quite the right word, but there's benefit in having something be generalizable. And also for the client, sometimes they don't want to spend weeks and weeks and months. They just want something that's off the shelf. So that's important too. So the way that we strike that balance with PentaQuest, I mean, we do bespoke gamifications, but we also have our software as a service platform, and that is designed so that it's got a core set of functionality, but users can turn on and off all these different things that they want. And so whenever we build something new into the platform, it's then made available to all other users, and then they can say, oh, cool, I love the mechanic, I'll turn it on. Actually, I don't need that one, I'll turn that one off. So for us, that's how we strike that. But that's, multiple years of working on one system that can be both super customizable, but as well as generalizable, and that's something that we continue to work in. If you're not a business like ours that specializes in gamification, if you're developing more sort of one-on-one things for clients, one way that you can think about that is creating sets for types of mechanics that would work for particular types of clients. So could be, oh, we found this works really well with educate with schools. Oh, they seem to love these mechanics. You can reuse some of those, or you might find that it's by user problem. So maybe if it's sales versus productivity versus culture, you might say, oh wow, these mechanics work really well with culture. And I think you'll find that as designers, you'll start making these sort of categories or these groupings anyway. But yeah, it's a really, really interesting question, Manish, really, really interesting. And I think at PentaQuest we have the balance really well, but it's very much a deliberate, conscious decision and something we continue to work on. And look, and sometimes, particularly with our platform as well, sometimes the client needs something different, in which case we'll build them a bespoke, fully customized one. But at the same time, the more that we solve similar type of problems, the more that we know the game mechanics we have work really well.